What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video we're doing another stream recap with some of the most insane battles you are literally ever going to see from yesterday's stream, where I took around 70 of the most attack-weighted Pokemon in the entire game, and randomly selected 3 of them at a time to see how many wins I could get. Now obviously I lost a lot more than I won, but the wins I did get are genuinely some of the most impressive wins you will see this season, and even some of the losses I had no business in making those games as close as they were, especially considering I started around 2900 elo. I did also do a few more battles off stream, so even if you did watch the entire stream, there's still going to be new content in this video. Now before we get into the question of the day, I have 2 things that I want to mention. Firstly, shout out to Connorism69, Seagrammer89, and especially huge shout out to the Zippiest for their gifted memberships in yesterday's live stream. Between them they gifted nearly 200 memberships in total, with the Zippiest alone gifting well over 100. So if you're now suddenly a channel member and you had no idea why, you have these guys to thank. Also, lastly, before we get into the question of the day, I just finished working on my latest track, which I'll leave a short preview of in just a moment, but currently the song doesn't have a title. So if you guys have any suggestions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Again, this is slightly different from what I usually make, but I think it's a good thing to experiment. So with that being said, let's finally get into that preview. So there we have it. Let me know what you think as well. If you do have a track name suggestion, please leave it in the comments. And with that being said, let's finally get into the question of the day. Are there any content creators that also like to run spice that you'd like to see me dual live stream with in the future? I am looking to do more collaborations, so let me know if you have any suggestions in the comments. And with that being said, let's finally get into the live stream recap now. Alright, so go into the first battle, leading Shadow Cacturn into Wigglytuff. Of course, this is an awful matchup for me, so I'm going to be safe swapping into Blaziken, and unfortunately, I'm just hard countered right off the bat here, but we're going to shield. I am going to be slightly ahead on energy, so I should just barely be able to reach back-to-back Aura Spheres before the opponent gets to their second Arctic, or at least I'd win CMP. So the opponent opts not to throw the next charge move. Instead, they're going to look to double shield their Quagsire, and now they look to massively overfarm. Unfortunately, I think they will outpace me to the next move, so I no shield the Aquatail, but I'm not in the best position. I can't really afford to shield my Shadow Cacturn, and likely this is going to be a Stone Edge, so I will let this move go through. Stone Edge does huge damage. The opponent gonna try and snipe me with the Wigglytuff, but I'm able to react in time, swap out into Blacephalon, and despite the fact that Blacephalon is going to completely wall the energy, I need to shield anything they throw here. I'm gonna farm up to 100 energy, of course. They did just debuff my attack stat. I'm now gonna debuff my defense stat as well, but let's see what they want to do. If they come back in with the Quagsire, I'm going to go straight for Shadow Ball, and despite being debuffed, Shadow Ball should now be enough damage to get the knockout. Their final Pokemon gonna be a Seismitoad. Oh, wait a second, Shadow Cacturn was just one more Sucker Punch away from the Trailblaze. Trailblaze is double super effective, and despite being triple hard countered, somehow we're able to come out with the win. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. I can see Shadow Conkeldurr into a Unova Stunfisk. They're going to be swapping into a Malamar, and unfortunately, I don't have the best response, so I'm going to swap out into Hisuian Zoroark, and I'm actually able to grab a shield advantage with the Foul Play. Now, unfortunately, they will outpace me to the next couple of charge moves, so I'm actually just going to take that shield advantage. What I'm really hoping for here is that we can go for a farm down, but we're taking so much Psywave damage, so instead, I'm just going to settle for the Brutal Swing, and Brutal Swing gets the knockout. Their final Pokemon is going to be a Shadow Jumpluff. Now you can see this Porygon Z does not have access to Tri-Attack. Instead, I've got double nukes with Solar Beam and Blizzard. Now, do they know about the Blizzard coverage here? I'm full sending anyways. Of course, I have to. Blizzard is unfortunately shielded by the opponent, of course. They don't know that I'm not on Tri-Attack there, but they do just shield anyways to play it safe. Now, let's see. The opponent's going to be swapping back into Unova Stunfisk. Now, here, I'm not really sure why I go for Solar Beam, so I actually go for quite a considerable undercharge. I'm now going to swap out into Conkeldurr and have have I just put them into perfect lock-on farm down range? Mud Bomb gets the knockout. We come in, we get the farm down, but can we outpace? No, just barely not able to do so. However, if I threw a Blizzard the first time around instead of the Solar Beam into Unova Stunfisk, it does cost slightly less energy. Maybe we get there on the CMP tie, but unfortunately, agonizingly close there, but we do lose that game. So, GG's opponent anyways. Into next battle, we are going to see a Kanto Ninetales in the lead. Unfortunately, with just a single bait, they can now guarantee to win this matchup here in any even shield scenario, because they will just now outpace me to the energy ball. So, I'm going to look to double shield here. The opponent is going to go for energy ball number 2. Are they going to swap out? Yes, they're going to swap out. They catch onto Mantine, and unfortunately, I don't have the best response in the back line. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to swap out after banking another Aqua Jet. I'm really hoping that I can tank a charge roof here. It's going to be close, but Water Pulse doesn't quite get the knockout. I'm now firing off the Ice Punch. Ice Punch also doesn't quite get the KO either, and so I'm actually going to allow them to farm me down. Of course, Ninetales does have a charge roof loaded, but they swap out into Tinkaton, and that is absolutely fine with me. As we swap out into Shadow Drillbur, I go straight for Drill Run. Drill Run, gonna be shielded. But then we accidentally throw an extra fast move. I tried to snipe them with the charge move here, but wait a second. Does that now set up a perfect farm down? The opponent reaches the last second charge move, but this is just the Bulldoze. Bulldoze, not enough damage there, but they still have 2 Pokemon remaining. All I'm expecting is that they go for a Peekaboo, so I wait for them to swap back into Ninetales there. Of course, they had the energy. They were hoping to get an extra fast move from me, and as soon as they saw that fast move, they swap out, but we hold on to any damage there, or any tapping, to make sure we see the Ninetales come back in. We throw the charge move, we win CMP, and we take that game. So, GG's to win there into the next battle, and we're going to see Barraskewda in the lead, throwing an Aqua Jet there, as we are, of course, very attack-weighted, and again, unfortunately, they do catch the next move onto Azumarill. And by the way, for the stream, at the start, I was using Barraskewda in every single battle, although eventually, because we had so many, like, gifted memberships and donations and stuff like that with team requests, to just get through, to make sure that we got through everything on the wheel, I did swap it out there so that we were just using completely unique teams every time, but anyways, we just missed a Thunder landing up against the Azumarill. That was very satisfying to see. We're now going to come in with the Shadow Fracture, and unfortunately, they do have quite a lot of energy here, so they fire off the Icy Wind. I'm actually now going to go for a Night Slash, because even with a debuff, I feel like this might get the knockout, and Night Slash has the opportunity to get the boost, and we get the boost. So now, we're back to our regular attack stat. They go for a Night Slash. They're now going to come in with a Shadow Ninetales. However, unfortunately for me, because I'm now just at my regular attack stat, it doesn't quite get the KO with the Aqua Tail, as it is non-stab damage, which means the opponent, they overfarm there. They're looking out for the catch. They're able to come out with the Weather Ball loaded. It gets the knockout, and unfortunately, I lose that game. But GG's opponent there into the next battle. You can see Shadow Annihilate in the lead now. This should be a good matchup for me because I've got super effective peck damage. But these counters are absolutely shredding me, and even worse for me is that they're just going to boost up their attack stat, and I've got 2 Pokemon that are weak to counter in the back line. Now, luckily for me, I can get the farm down here with 4 Sucker Punches, but they nearly take out all of my health. I'm now going to swap into Lucario, and unfortunately, they're going to have a Tinkaton in the back. Now, I'm going to have to no-shield this first move, because if they get a debuff, Bulldoze will deal more damage. They don't get the debuff there, and I'm going to throw straight away. I don't expect them to shield here. The opponent is, however, going to use their shield, and they're going to throw immediately. So at this point, I'm going to have to shield as well. I'm thinking, you know what? If they're shielding, they must have like a licky in the backline, in which case we do still have play as Aura Sphere gets the knockout with double resisting the Roulette damage, but it actually gets the farm down anyways. That is so painful there. Lucario, bro. Oh man, if we had like 1 more HP, we get to the Aura Sphere, we probably get the one shot and we win that game, but unfortunately we don't, and so we lose. But GG's to that trainer. Into next battle, we're going to see a Dunsparce in the lead, and they're going to be on Astonish here. They're also going to go straight for a Drill Run. I'm going to bait with an Aqua Jet. Now, this is not going to do enough damage to get the knockout if they no shield, and unfortunately that is the case. However, I'm going to swap out as they get to the next move, and that allows me to get a full Incinerate in for free, which means, yes, we do take 1 more Incinerate. Yes, we are now down both shields, but we've got a Mind Blown already loaded. Now, unfortunately for me, I'm only going to get to 1 charge move as they can reach a Bulldoze, but the opponent makes my life so much easier as they now swap out into Shadow Primeape, so we go for another one. We grab the final shield, and now we can snipe with the Barraskewda. Aqua Jet gets the one shot. They come back in with the Tinkaton. I'm able to reach a last second close combat here. Close combat, gonna connect as all shields are down, and it gets them incredibly low to the point where a single Incinerate will farm them down. Now the opponent needs to farm up to a Gigaton Hammer and have enough energy to reach a Bulldoze after just one Fairy Wind, but they didn't farm enough, which means Incinerate gets that full farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. Awful lead matchup for me as I'm leading with a Shadow Gengar. But wait a second, we've got access to Thunderbolt, and this trainer, they don't know about it. Thunderbolt gets the one shot. We flip switch advantage. Also, Shadow Magmortar is like the brightest Pokemon that I've ever seen in Pokemon Go. This thing is just so bright on screen right now. But anyways, we're going to go for a Fire Punch. Unfortunately, they've got so much energy here. I don't even know if I can come in and two-shot farm them down before they reach 3 charge moves. Hopefully, well, if they go for Icy Wind, then I'm going to deal even less damage. They go for a Night Slash, and they actually get the boost, which is, of course, not ideal for me in the slightest. And unfortunately, we're not able to go for that full farm down. They get to yet another move. Night Slash gets the knockout. But we're going to find out that the opponent had a Unnovan Stunfisk in the backline anyways. Even if we did get the full farm down, there's just no way I win this game there. Even landing a Hyper Beam that probably just doesn't do enough damage there. So unfortunately, we lose that game. But GG to a trainer into the next battle. This is going to be one of the bonus battles where I am going to run another team that we did not see on stream. So leading with Shadow Palkia, they're going to bait with a Surf, which I think is a very unnecessary bait because it still takes them the same amount of hexes to reach a Shadow Ball anyways. And if they were to bait again with a second Surf, that's actually not going to get the knockout as it's double resisted by the Shadow Palkia. And of course, we are very glassy, but we can tank a Surf. Now anyways, the opponent is going to go and full send the Shadow Ball here, but we can come in, get the Incinerate farm down with Shadow Darmanitan, and they're going to come in with Altaria. Of course, we've got Rock Slide for coverage here, so I'm going straight for it. Rock Slide is going to be shielded by the Altaria, and the opponent going to overfarm just a little bit here. At this point, I'm happy to no shield this. Sky Attack will get the knockout. We then come in with our Shadow Chandelure, and the opponent is going to outpace me to the next move. Now, I'm actually going to wait one turn here and then throw the charge move, but the opponent throws one Dragon Breath, and then they swap out into a Stunfisk. But it's going to be a Galarian Stunfisk where Incinerate is super effective, which puts them into perfect farm down range for me to come out with another Shadow Ball loaded. And Shadow Ball number 2 takes out Altaria, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's over there into the next battle. We're going to see another bonus battle as we lead Mean Shao into a Fearow. This is not a great matchup for me, and I can't really swap out of this matchup because I've also got Hisuian Zoroark in the back, which has resisted fast food pressure. But we've dealt a lot of damage there with those Force Palms. They go for a full farm down. We can technically completely wall their energy with the Thunderous. However, you're going to see that a single Drill Peck does like 65% of our HP. That is honestly quite embarrassing there. But I'm going to shield the next one, go for that Thundershock farm down. However, unfortunately, I don't get that much farm. I come out with a Brick Break loaded. Brick Break is going to connect, and their final Pokemon is a Seismitoad. Now, unfortunately, they barely outpace me here as they go for an Icy Wind. Icy Wind, of course, non-stab. It's not going to do too much damage into most Pokemon. However, this is Hisuian Zoroark we're talking about, so I bait with a foul play. The opponent committing to the Earth Power or just over-farming for no reason whatsoever. Shadow Ball is going to connect. It gets the KO, and I'm able to swap out. I catch the charge move. However, it's a Bulldoze, and I think they might have even slightly undercharged there, which means they can now barely outpace me to the next move, and unfortunately, from this range, even a Bulldoze takes out the Zoroark, and we end up losing that game. But GG's up on there into the next battle. We're going to see a Jumpluff in the lead. So definitely what my backline does not want to see. So happy to sit here up against my Shadow Ursaring. I'm going straight for Swift. Swift is going to connect, and it does decent damage. Now at this point, if they full send in Acrobatics, that will get the one shot, but they bait with an Energy Ball. Well, not really a bait because it does very nearly take me out, but we're able to reach a Swift, and Swift is going to put them into range where I can actually peck farm them down. I'm going to come in straight away with that Barraskewda, shield up the Energy Ball, and they're going to swap out into a Shadow Celio. Now, I could bait here, but you know what? We're already down a shield. Close combat is no shielded, but their final Pokemon is going to be a Shadow Kanto Ninetales. And unfortunately, with a shield advantage, this is actually not looking that great for me, as I have 0 fast speed pressure, as I'm running Peck instead of Waterfall. At this point, I probably should no shield here. I'm expecting the opponent to swap back out into Jump Bluff, but actually, what I should have done instead is swap into my Greninja, as I would have got a Water Shuriken farm down, would have come out with a Hydro Cannon loaded, and I've already got a Charge Move loaded here. So here, I needed them to throw on CMP, but I think they've got too much residual energy anyways. So at this point, they are going to look to overfarm. From this range, even a Weather Ball will get the knockout. And then, of course, we've got Shadow Greninja in the back line. They can outpace me to the Energy Ball, and this is super effective. Energy Ball takes out the Shadow Greninja, and unfortunately, I lose that game. But GG's when they're into the next battle, we're going to see a Shadow Murkrow in the lead up against the Thievul, so a decent matchup for us, of course. Expect them to be on Icy Wind here, but we can go straight for a Drill Peck, throwing just before they do reach the Icy Wind, and the opponent is now finally going to throw. Now, a little bit embarrassing here, we are resisting their fast food pressure whilst dealing neutral damage in return, and they're actually dealing more damage with the Sucker Punches than we're dealing with our Pecks. But we're going to grab the final shield, and at this point, you know what, we're going to let the Murkrow go down, and then going to come in with my Inteleon, and I'm actually not going to bother shielding anything. We do have a little bit of fast move pressure with Water Gun. It's not a great fast move whatsoever, but we're going to no shield this and hoping that a shield advantage Shadow Landorus can sweep in the end game. Now, unfortunately, they come in with a Jellicent. I wasn't entirely sure if I'd reach a Shadow Ball, so instead we swap out, and actually we can just barely reach back-to-back Rock Sides here. The opponents have back-to-back Surfs, but of course we're easily going to win CMP, so we fire off Rock Side number 2. Rock Side, of course, gotta get the KO here, and they're going to have a Tinkaton in the back line. So I expect they're probably going to swap out, but they didn't swap out straight away, but we actually get the farm down up against the Thievul. We come out with a Snipe Shot. That's not really necessary because we've got the Earth Power loaded. This is super effective damage. Earth Power takes out the Tinkaton, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's when they're into the next battle, you can see Galarian Corsola in the lead. So, we're going to just stay in this matchup here. Of course, not the best matchup for me. However, if I can put them into range where I can maybe shield once with my Sneasler and go for a Shadow Claw farm down, Sneasler's energy is pretty scary into a lot of things. So, at this point, we are just going to no shield. Nightshade gets the knockout, but now we can come in. We're on Shadow Claw. Shadow Claw is super effective damage. These Astonishes are doing quite a lot of damage here, but we can shield once, as I mentioned. Likely going to grab a shield back from pretty much anything that comes in, but they come in with a Carbink, and their final Pokemon is a Shadow Kanto Ninetales, and not only that, they throw on horrific timing, which means we can shield once, go for the full Mudslap farm down, but unfortunately, we're not actually going to come out with that much energy, but we're super, super low. Now, someone should tell Dugtrio that you're actually double resisting the Rock Throw damage because it does not look like that. We're taking quite a lot of damage. We grab the final shield. We have a lot of energy, but we're not quite at back-to-back moves. And close combat is not enough damage to get the KO here. Potentially, if this battle was done pre-Mudslap nerf, maybe I would have already done enough damage over time to get the KO there. But unfortunately, we're not able to get the knockout, and we end up losing that game with Dugtrio aligned to their Carbink. That is quite embarrassing. But anyways, into next battle, GG's to that previous trainer, although they were running a Carbink, so I don't know if it was really a good game. But we're going to see a Jump Off in the lead, which is quite tricky for me because I do have Reshiram in the back line where I wouldn't mind catching like an Energy Ball, for example. They've already baited with the Energy Ball, so this time around we are going to shield, and they do, of course, go and full send the Acrobatics. Now, unfortunately, we barely miss out on a Draco Meteor, but the opponent is going to shield anyways, maybe just not keeping track of the energy, or the fact that we could potentially be running Crunch as well. Either way, they farm up a lot of energy, but it doesn't really matter because Kartana also has a ton of energy loaded, so I can fire off the Leaf Blade straight away, and all shields are down. Leaf Blade gets the KO. They come back in with the Jump Off, and at this point, I'm really hoping that I can just basically nuke anything with my Shadow Latios in the back line. So Acrobatics gonna get the KO, and we're in for some good times here as we are going to outpace them by a single turn. Honestly, Aura will probably one-shots me, but we're able to get the KO with an Aura Sphere, Dragon Breath, farm down the Jump Off, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. You can see Blaziken in the lead up against a Charge Bug. They're going to be swapping out straight away and into an Azumarill. Now, unfortunately, Wugtrio is one of the worst Pokemon in the entire game, so I'm basically just going to sacrifice it here whilst I can resist their fast speed pressure. We can reach a Dig, not going to do too much damage, but it will put them into range where eventually maybe I could even peck farm them down if I shield once with my Barraskewda, although that is quite ambitious. So at this point, I'm definitely going to shield here. The opponent has already revealed the play rough. They bait with an Ice Beam this time around, but here, as you can see, we're not going to go for a full farm down, so I'm going to go for a slight undercharge, however, and I can still get a little bit more energy. I'm now going to swap out into Blaziken, but their final Pokemon is a Fearow, but it looks like I will just barely reach back-to-back Aura Spheres. So first one, gonna be grabbing a shield. Do they double shield here, or do they let it go down? Aura Sphere number 2 gets the knockout, but now, unfortunately, I'm going to take too much fast speed pressure from the Charger Bug. Arcjet is going to do a lot of damage, but it's not quite enough, and as a result, they can farm me down there. They live with about 10 HP remaining, and unfortunately, I lose that game. So, GG's to that previous opponent there. By the way, next battle is going to be up against the Zippiest, who was the very kind donator who gifted over 100 memberships. This is just a battle for fun here. I don't usually battle against my subscribers during streams where I'm also doing battles in the Go Battle League, but you know what? They donated over 100 gifted memberships, so kind of had to at this point. But anyways, we are unfortunately being countered, but it does look like the opponent is lagging quite a bit there, so I made to grab both shields from that Tyrant, as likely they just had no idea how much energy we had. Now, expecting another Rock Tomb here, I'm just going to look to shield this and then go for the full farm down. I'm going to have to swap out, and the opponent's actually going to have a Charmed Delcatty in the back line. I'm not a big fan of Charmers, but Delcatty is a very spicy pick. Then I'm going to come back in with the Mudbray, and you know what? I'm just going to look to shield here. The opponent fires off the Body Slam. I can now look to overfarm. I'm going to fire off another Brick Break. This should now get the knockout, and Delcatty is very slow to reach its charge moves. It does have both Disarming Voice and Wild Charge. However, with the Brick Break gonna drop their defense. Now we can come in with the Shadow Ghastly. I'm able to reach a Sludge Bomb, and Sludge Bomb easily takes out the Delcatty, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up in there into the final battle, and apologies, this one is going to be very laggy here. This was one of the latest battles that I did on the stream. I didn't realize it was getting so bad here, so that is why we did end the stream in the end. But either way, I'm going to look to shield a Surf here. I don't think people were really telling me that the stream was lagging this much at the time, so I wish people would have been a little bit more vocal. But anyways, we're going to be swapping out into Excelgor. I was basically looking to fully sacrifice this Pokemon. However, you're going to see right now that Focus Blast gets the one-shot up against the Tinkaton. Unfortunately, we don't actually get to see that cleanly, which is quite disappointing. I think what was happening here is that Steam randomly decided to start updating Black Ops 7 as I was streaming, which was not ideal for me because, of course, that meant I had very little internet for other stuff like, you know, streaming, for example. But anyways, I'm going to look to shield here. I'm expecting to swap back into Jellicent. However, they just debuffed my attack stat, and as a result, this Rock Slide is no longer going to deal as much damage as I was hoping for. What I was hoping was that I'd put them into Fury Cutter farm down range, but unfortunately, as we come in with the Shadow Pinsir, we're barely going to miss out on reaching another charge move, and as a result, Shadow Ball gets the KO there, and we lose that final game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.